Untamed is going to be untamed. It's going to be a little crazy. I want to talk to my people. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters. We can have grace and humility in how we interact with other people.
Oh, hot dog, look at you.
And nobody talked about what's really happening.
And let's have conversations about what truth is.
We had people come in from what I consider well-heeled townships and say, well, I knew if I sent it down there, you'd figure out where it was. Well, we couldn't.
So I think my work was more from like a legal standpoint, if it like legally has to be attached to it, or if you just need to be with it so you know which tapes came from which precinct and belong to which return sheet.
I think it's a combination of both, but legally you have to have it. The issues that we had when we did the reconciliation is that we were trying to reconcile the number of people voted with the yellow books and then with the return to ballots. I mean, we haven't even talked about reconciling the used and unused ballots, and I presume that's something we can do down the road. But it was not easy, and these poor people came in there and they were sweating bullets because they all thought they were going to go out in cuffs. It has to be stressed that tape has to be attached.
Well, welcome back to this Friday edition of Untamed. We have a guest that I'm going to bring in. We'll just call him B. We don't get to show his name, but he's been doing sleuthing on the election since 2020. He also was involved in a lot of other collection of information related to whether it be COVID or Hunter Biden, most notably. But mostly some of the things that come out of why are elections fixed in the United States. It's difficult to trust people in this mix. We were actually talking about it before we got on the podcast about whether or not we can trust even the Tyler Robinson deal, and had a very healthy conversation about that. I think we'll probably talk a little bit about that, but over the years, B and I have had great conversations related to information that came up, coincidences, some just the smoke and the smoking gun. He was directly involved in helping with the things that I did with Raul, who, by the way, is still in prison over in Romania. And we don't always agree, and I like that. I like that we don't always agree, because iron sharpens iron, and typically we always come out the same way after a discussion. But with that said, B, welcome to the show.
Great to be back here, man. Thanks for having me. Excellent intro. Couldn't have said it better myself, man. Healthy discourse is, the way to keep the wheels of civilization churning.
And I think we always come to the same conclusion that, hey, there's distrust, there's chaos, but the output variable, and we find ourselves in the same familiar situation. Like, can we trust this? Can we not trust it? Can we trust the people that are giving us information? And a lot of times we come to the same conclusion that, well, two things can be true at the same time. And that's, we can say that, hey, not everything is going to be Israel's fault. I think it's healthy to say it's probably not. We got enough bad actors here in the United States. You have the jihadis, and you have this infiltration and capturing that's happened of our election systems. And I don't think that requires Israel to do it. I think we did a pretty good job of betraying ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. The Marxist leftist alliance with the jihadis, the red-green alliance, as you will, is very much alive and well, and is operating basically at maximum capacity in the U.S. right now.
So I want to go through some things, because there's you and I have talked a little bit about who built the adjudication process inside the Dominion system specifically. And we've also talked about, some of the information. How long has it been around? Like, how long have they known that there's been these problems that, John Solomon and others have talked about? Obviously, I've been talking about it since 2020. And I think we came to the same conclusion with this, but from different perspectives, just based on the history of Dominion itself. So here's the post. Is Mark Cook put it up, and I said, "Who built the adjudication process?" LO, it's laughable. We're still talking about this. I'm ready when you are. And if we look further into this ASEC, which is, by the way, the code review that was done on Dominion's Democracy Suite 4.14, and the date of this was in 2014. Now, they went on to talk about in 2008, the Easter egg backdoors. Review the code found no instances of deliberate inserted backdoors or Easter eggs. However, many of the vulnerabilities could potentially be exploited by a knowledgeable insider. And he used the word insider. Now, if you look at the ASEC review on the other side related to Dominion, same thing, same identical thing, backdoors 2.4.5. And it talks specifically about the backdoors that they were able to uncover in 2014. Now, let's fast forward to 2020, which was 6 years later. Let's fast forward to 2024. You have people in Congress that are talking about it loosely. You have whistleblowers that came forward that said, hey, back in 2008, they were messing with the tally tabs inside of Sequoia. And here we are, 2026, the same vulnerabilities that we've been talking about since 2014. And in large part, an insider, we can talk about Eric Coomer. We can talk about someone else that I know you want to talk about. But it talks about this adjudication process. And we talk Win EDS, you have the adjudication, you have this known ability to have separate databases like we found in Mesa County, in the 4 reports that came from there. And then we have something we'll talk about in a minute, which is what came out of Maricopa County and some of the alignment that's happening currently with Kash Patel, the FBI, and of course, Cyber Ninjas. So what do you make of this ASEC report and the date, the timing, and the fact that 12 years later, we're finally being Captain Obvious?
Well, what's funny is if you want to go back to the date and time of this report, they would have called us extremist Democrats and election deniers on the Democrat side of the aisle. So just find it and not just talking any Democrats, we're talking Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Ron Wyden, etc. So not exactly your run-of-the-mill. But what's interesting, I see you alluded to Goran Abramovich there, who is, if you go back to the patents, he was the original chief technology officer for Dominion Voting. He's the one who was actually recorded in 2016 talking about how their customer service assistance center in Belgrade, he actually, this is in an interview, you can actually read this by yourself. He was the president of the Canadian Serbian Association. It's CANSI is the acronym. And in this interview, he talks about how Dominion Voting and how they're assisting in the 2016 election and how they can, in real time, they can assist a technician anywhere in the world directly, live. Now, how can you do that? If they're in Belgrade, how can you do that? These are standalone isolated systems. But anyways, to your point, it's also incumbent upon us to not forget that Sequoia became Dominion. And when you actually go into Sequoia's bankruptcy paperwork, their Chapter 7, Chapter 11, I believe I've shared this with you before too. I believe it was Judge Oltmann. When I shared those before, it was basically Sequoia and Dominion and Smartmatic were listed as...
They were listed as creditors on the Chapter 7.
Yeah.
So they were able to recover, if you look in that file, they were able to recover information related to, and the IP related to the bankruptcy for Sequoia.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So, we keep talking about the loose fit, disparate environment that allows for them to show that, oh, there's no connected tissue. It's all just a coincidence that these people are all connected. But as you start to dig into where the connections take us, it leads us back to the same players. You can talk about Eric Coomer lying in his deposition. You can talk about John Polos. I don't even think that guy can fog a mirror. He really just doesn't know what he's talking about, and is more of a placeholder CEO than he is anyone of any substance or intelligence, because I don't think he articulated or talked to the structure of Dominion and how it worked when he testified even before the Michigan committee.
Yeah, no, he's definitely there because of that NCI degree, and that's not even his full name, by the way. It's not his actual name, by the way.
What's his actual name?
It's something like
I know this.
Stephanopoulos. It's a
Yeah.
long one, man. He's got like one of like those really long, weird Greek last names.
Greek names,
But
yeah.
he is actually on the original Canadian patents along with Ioannidakis and Hoover and Goran Abramovich, if you go into like the original Canadian patents. But obviously he wasn't on the scientific side of the house. But there
Well,
is like
I don't think he understood how the system worked. I think he was a patsy. He
has no technical acumen at all.
Yeah, and that so that leads me, a part of that leads me to, and obviously we're talking about like who's responsible, and you have Eric Coomer, which started out as the chief architect, gets moved into a different position. That's more of an obscure position of VP of engineering. Then he moves from VP of engineering. By the way, there all the way since the beginning of inception, from nearly day one, not day one, but nearly day one, from when Smartmatic purchased Sequoia Voting Systems and was in 17 states and the District of Columbia, and then moved into a more obscure role, but still is the responsible one for pulling all the punches on sales, pulling all the punches on engineering, is on nearly every email thread, is having every conversation, is sitting on CISA meetings, and has the capacity as part of all the patent process. And you could talk about the people that are suspect in this environment, but we're in a place now where we can see it. I mean, it's not coincidence anymore, and there certainly is connected tissue to show what these people have done. And yet now it takes us back to 2014, and we're still talking about it. 12 years later, we're still talking about it. The same systems are in place, and the same vulnerabilities are there, and the same insiders caused the elections to be stolen over the last 12 years.
Oh yeah, no. Let's clarify that point real quick. I am not in any way absolving Eric Coomer, who has very much been complicit in some, at least illicit, but probably illegal activity as well, for his role in this. And he was a very central node, particularly during the 2010s. It's not to say he was the guy who had
not just
developed
here
everything
too.
on the
You have
patents.
Mongolia. You've got other countries that he was involved in that as well. Right.
Correct.
So it's not just here. Yeah.
And that's by his own admission as well, might I add.
Yeah, I mean, he's made a lot of admissions, but without trying to make admissions and say, well, I'm just a patsy. I'm just a guy that doesn't really do anything. And then you get the emails and you get the access that shows it's completely different than what he said.
Yeah, it's correct. And, it just goes to show we should have absolutely zero trust in these election systems because, again, we know the bad actors are formulating these designs, these architectural designs, these frameworks, these systems. But also they're doing this in conjunction simultaneously, largely with parts from China. There is a very extensive laundry list of shipments going to voting companies, which originate from China, particularly going into the US. And there are bills of lading to support this as well.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want to talk about this because a familiar name keeps coming up, two familiar names. I got a little heated on a conversation I was having with you related to these people, but one of which is John Solomon, right? And he now is, the trust for the FBI and the CIA, you'd probably say it's non-existent, right? The American people have no trust in either one of those establishments. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and I would say that there's probably two prongs to that. There's a genuine distrust, which has been amplified by bad actors who want to completely, dispel like the institutions and just, dissolve them, 3 sheets into one. I know there are some people who, haven't been subjected to like that foreign influence who just still genuinely feel that way. But, in the end, it's cui bono, who benefits. And, if we completely dismantle our whole, federal law enforcement system apparatus, that is a very much a big win, a big victory for our enemies. I think the best bet we have is just to purge them. I don't know if some of them are, beyond repair, but I know that not all of them need to be disbanded. I think there is hope for them, but
well, there's hope. But can we talk about the judiciary? I mean, Bukele says very clearly that if you don't get rid of the radical judges, then you will never get back to a place where you can fix your country, because they'll always stand in opposition and will be pushing this radical ideology and this lawlessness, and it just takes too long. So you got to get rid of the judges. So how do we get rid of the judiciary without a war? Because you could say a lot of things, and everyone keeps saying it, but I guess I'm just to the place right now where I recognize we're going to have an armed conflict. I believe it's going to get violent.
So, you know me, you know where I live, and a lot of these activist judges. So the way it works here is it's almost impossible for a judge to be fired from their position, and
right.
Judges actually hold a lot more power than U.S. authorities, than U.S. judges, and they're largely the reason why we're still having like these, like this just ubiquitous immigration problem.
Same problem, but by the way, it's endemic across the entire world. I mean, every country is faced with this intrusion of just radical and been giving free entitlements while shitting on the people.
African, not African and Middle East countries.
Yeah, because nobody wants to go there. They're shitholes.
Well, because they're all leaving from there, and most of the people who are leaving there, I'll tell you what, you could probably go without even putting a prison in Africa at this point, because every criminal in Africa is now in Europe, and that's not an understatement. And to the Europeans' credit, they have begun to address this. The French just passed the anti-burqa law, and there are other pieces of legislation which are now going through addressing this, especially in light of the whole Ceuta and Morocco incident, which was not totally generic or organic at all by any means. And that's a whole nother conversation. We're not going to go into that, but you remember here in Italy, we had 2 judges who were killed by the mafia for their investigations into. These were actually 2 of the good judges. It's only the good judges who end up dead. And that's not to advocate violence or anything like that, but it just goes to show that the right is very reactionary, and that it needs to address some of these deficiencies and wake up to what the left is doing.
Yeah, I think we have to get to a place where you can stop team evil, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that people have to get more. And look, I every single day I have to wake up and I have to make sure I check my surroundings, check the cameras, do everything, because I know team evil is coming for me at some point, right? So I got to make sure I'm prepared for it, and that I got an upper hand on that behavior. At the same time, it's difficult when team evil has no limits. Like, they don't care if they go to jail, they don't care if they lose their life. They're just evil. They're consumed by something, that a hatred of goodness that pushes them in a direction where they just want to perpetuate evil. If they can serve that port and that purpose, then they want to be able to do that regardless of the consequences. The other side is the people like you, me, and most of the people that I know or associate with. We just want to live our lives, right? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Let's get some opportunity in there. Let's really just pursue how we can make our society better. So those become victims because they're obviously focused on the good, not focused on what's going on around them. I got to show you this though, B. This is I want to play this for you, and this is John Solomon playing what I think is the Judas of or I'm on our side, but let's go ahead and play it.
We've talked a lot about China and Iran, but you know what? The single greatest intrusion on our election the last 6 years is what the FBI, the CIA did to our country. They didn't put a thumb on our scale. They put a whole body on the scale of the election. They tried to pretend Donald Trump was a Russian asset when they knew it wasn't. They used Hillary Clinton's opposition research to do it. They misled FISA courts. They misled the American people. They expended tens of millions of dollars. They told us not to believe the Hunter Biden laptop when they knew it was real. They told us there was no evidence that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden had corrupt relationships when their files were chock full of it. The greatest intrusion in our election wasn't a foreigner. Our vulnerabilities to foreigners are high. The greatest intrusions to our elections were our own intelligence and law enforcement agencies from 2016 to early 2025. They intervened in our election more than any foreign power, and thus far, none of them have paid a dear price.
Thoughts? So
You
I
know what? You know I'm not
understand.
going to have nothing nice to say about either one of those men, but
Yeah.
I'll explain that in a minute. But he talked about Hunter Biden's laptop and things like that. People have been given large sums of money. Hunter Biden won a lawsuit related to a defamation case, right? And yet we know it's all true.
So JP McIsaac ended up losing his lawsuit against Hunter Biden, and I'm not going to comment on that because there's things regarding his counsel that I believe played a large role in that.
Of course.
But
isn't that usually the case?
Hunter
Isn't it usually you have counsel that does things on purpose by accident to cause that?
Yeah, and in this case, Hunter Biden's biggest problem now is ironically coming from his former defense counsel, who are now suing him for outstanding fees to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. So this would largely explain his new his new jaunt, making the rounds on the podcast circuit. Because obviously his art is not selling for the same price as Picasso's like it used to, while his daddy was the illegitimate vice president.
Illegitimate president. Illegitimate president.
Oh, illegitimate president.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. Maybe even illegitimate vice president. 2008 election. Here we go.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I said this to you before, and I've said this over and over again. Never stand on the side of the devil, not even for a minute. Steve Bannon, good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and you look at that relationship and just the disgusting nature of who Jeffrey Epstein is, what he did to women. Virginia Giuffre, you can't ignore the fact that whether she committed suicide or you think that there was some nefarious action that happened, she fought for over 20 years. She fought for the defenseless against a guy that was already once convicted of being a pedophile. And she had a sitting judge in 2019 that said, because you have all this evidence, but you didn't get it the right way, procedurally, we're going to make you burn it. And they made Virginia Giuffre's attorney destroy evidence related to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, think about that, B. Think about that. Criminal activity, criminal content. Same thing they're doing to Stephanie Lambert related to the case, the Dominion v. Patrick Byrne out of Washington, D.C., right? Same thing.
Yeah, and if you want to, about Jeffrey Epstein, here's the thing: Bannon wasn't saying a thing about Epstein during the first Trump administration, during Trump 1, and a lot of people like us, like you and me, were like, yeah, that guy's an asshole. He needs to be dealt with. Pardon my French. And I think if you want to go into some of like the networking around Jeffrey Epstein, I hate to plug it, but I've got it right there on that little mind map that we've analyzed with Patrick before. So if you want to dedicate another time and date to that, we can definitely do it. I think a lot of people would be shocked at how infiltrated his whole network was on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, but we know that. I mean, you look at John Thune and you look at Mike Johnson and what they've done with the Save America Act. I mean, we can't get something across the finish line that 85% of the American people favor, right? And my issue with John Solomon and Steve Bannon is that, first of all, a broken clock is right more often a day than John Solomon has been over the last 6 years, right? I mean, he's never been right. He has made comments about what's coming next and this, that. He has never been right. And he's not the most articulate or smart man. I met him at the Miles Guo, Free Miles Guo event in New York. And he's just not smart. He parrots the same leftist stuff. He's just a weak, fat man that, frankly, got up on stage and became somebody's EBIT. But the things that he says here, that it's the FBI and the CIA, and that we didn't, that you have all these foreign things happening. And he's over there talking to Steve Bannon, who literally is playing hide the weenie and cover up improprieties the same way he covered up improprieties or wanted to make Jeffrey Epstein more likable. I don't know how you make a pedophile more likable, and I don't know how you spend 5 minutes in the room when you have a daughter, because Steve Bannon has a daughter, have a daughter that you could stomach being in the room with a guy that raped children. I mean, could you be? Could you?
I wouldn't walk into that room because there would only be one person walking out.
I can't. Steve Bannon to me is like, I mean, you have this. He was charged with a federal crime, and I don't know if the federal crime was true related to the wall, right? And he got pardoned by President Trump, and he stood on the ground, the hollow ground. But then you find out behind the scenes that he's working against President Trump's interests, which doesn't surprise me. Does it surprise you? Surprise you that people that say that they're for President Trump would be standing behind him doing harmful things to him?
No, I'm not surprised at all. As a matter of fact, I think this is still very much ongoing to this day by some people who hold the Trump name, actually have the Trump name on their business card. I think Pence was working proactively against Trump the whole time. Yeah. Him with his chief of staff, Nick Ayers, who is now, parroting Rick Jackson in Georgia. And that whole institute of public square holdings in 1789 Capitol, and some of the questionable behavior around that. So I think that's still kind of ongoing to this day. Hopefully he's still dealing with it better, but at least he doesn't have Pat Cipollone back in there.
Well, you had Pam Bondi, right? Just as bad. I mean, Kardashian Bondi. You got Kash Patel, the FBI. You have people in the FBI that are actively talking about this, by the way, to other former FBI people. And they're saying that, there's a portion of the FBI that has an appetite to get to the bottom of these things. And that typically every time Kash Patel puts his nose into those different investigations, or two other individuals associated with him that put their nose into it, the SAC, or the person responsible for overseeing that, steps in and says, I'm going to reassign you to something different, or we're going to move stuff around. And so there's a growing frustration inside the FBI that people are basically trying to play hide the weenie, moving stuff around inside the FBI so that you release just enough to the American public that you quench that thirst that maybe something's going to happen, kind of renewing this hopium. I feel like they must have a people meter out there that's measuring it. But it's not sincere. There's no sincerity in getting to accountability for the American people. They just want to keep us enslaved. And I think that they realize that, frankly, the American people just don't have an appetite for anymore. And they're just trying to figure out, okay, where's our window of opportunity where we can just crush the opposition or crush the ability for there to be any sort of outcome outside of what we want to be the outcome.
No, I couldn't agree more. And, Kash Patel, at a anecdotal level, dealing with him and the whole Raul situation was a bit of a cluster in itself as well. And this was, obviously long before he was, director of the FBI. But with Patel, I wouldn't say that it's so much malice as it is just maybe he's out of his depth. Maybe there's a degree of incompetence there. And, I think I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, given everything that he went through working for Nunes. If there was something there on him, it would have already been exposed. It would have been out, just the same as with Trump. If there was something there with Russia Trump, there would have been no need for, Oxford comma after he ditched, Comey. So I'll give Kash a little bit of leeway, but I will chalk that up more to incompetence than I will to any malicious.
I mean, but here's the problem. We're constantly talking about incompetency. Pam Bondi, incompetency. Todd Blanche was blamed for what happened with Tina Peters. A pardon was issued, and you had them parroting this deal that the states' rights don't allow for a presidential pardon to apply to state charges, which is absolutely bunk. Matter of fact, the only 3 cases associated with that where a presidential pardon was given on a state charge, all 3 were found to be valid. The president of the United States has authority over the citizenry of the entire country. And yet they came out and parroted the same thing. And the DOJ did not have an appetite to walk in with the Marshal Service and take Tina Peters into custody. She'd spent another 8 or 9 months in jail before a Democrat was able to pardon her. So I just feel like it's more kabuki theater that falls on the shoulders of the American people. It never falls where it's supposed to fall.
Well, I think we get glimmers of hope. Bill Pulte was certainly a breath of fresh air in that regard, and there were a lot of people who were very reserved towards him. I was not one of them. I was a huge fan, even during his temporary appointment. Now he's not there anymore.
Let's right back into Todd Blanche. What do you think of him? I want to believe.
Yeah. I mean, I think Todd Blanche, he has his moments of glory. I mean, is he better than Pam Bondi is a product of Brian Ballard. And
but Todd Blanche was in essence running things. Pam Bondi sat down in her Florida, whatever you want to do it. I mean, the CEO of the DOJ in large part had relinquished control to Todd Blanche. He was the one running things on the day-to-day for the Department of Justice. And it's hard to look at the AUSAs that we have across the country and not think these can't be the smartest people that we have that are available in the legal world, right? It's not possible. We walk past very competent people like Professor David Clements. They should have hunted him down and said, put him in a position of trust and authority. But because they didn't, and others, the Bob Destros of the world, the John Eastmans, there are special appointments that could have been made that would have been Wreck-It Ralph, but none of those things were to happen. And instead we get people that are just status quo people, which leads me down the path of they don't want to solve the problem.
Well, I think there was also this sort of ecosystem which was built out of MAGA, full of milquetoast intellectuals. And they kind of moved in as the new political consulting class, and it became a good old boy network again.
Yeah.
And it was even so much of a good old boy network that even Heritage was kind of left on the outskirts in some regards. But I think that's just the nature of politics, and you wonder why we don't have the top AUSAs in the world. Well, look, why doesn't the military, why aren't they able to retain career pilots? Why do they have this 2,000 pilot shortage in the Air Force right now? Why do military doctors get out of the military? Why do the best CIA agents get out after their minimum 5-year obligation or 10-year obligation if they do another tour? Why do they do that? Because the money's better on the outside. Nobody wants to be a civil servant anymore. It's almost like a liability to be in civil service now, or in this case, even law enforcement, especially in this day and age, given how targeted law enforcement has become. I mean, these guys, there's a reason these DHS guys have to wear a mask. It's because they know they'll be doxxed and targeted by a very, very violent far left. So, you wonder why at the same time, you kind of get your answer too. If that makes it.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I don't disagree. I just think that again, I come back to it. Two things can be right at the same time. and yet here we are. I want to show you something. This is FBI Director Patel and Doug Logan describing from Cyber Ninjas. This was in the report for Cyber Ninjas, and this is the information that they released from FBI Director Patel. It's not Cash's report. It's a report that came out in 2020. Obviously, he was not the FBI Director in 2020. But let's go and put that up if we can. So live heard Megan Gilbertson and Scott Jarrett from Election Department in Maricopa County do not seem to understand what the word breach actually means. So if you go through this, the the funny money of this, if we could just put that up, is this is a part of the voter registration system audit access, and this goes through the subpoenas, and one of the most important components of the audit was the analysis of voter registration system and the records of authorized and unauthorized access to that system. Our audit team has been denied the access required to complete this portion of the audit. In the Senate subpoena dated January 12th, 2021, Maricopa was ordered to provide the auditors access to control of all equipment used connection with the administration of the 2020 election. In a second subpoena dated July 26, 2021, the county was ordered to provide all reports, findings, and the documents concerning the voter registration breach. The response from the county claims they are not aware of a breach. But claiming that the breach was nothing more than unauthorized access to a public data that has not been supported by evidence, according to a news article published December 4th, 2020. Maricopa County confirmed voter data had been stolen and a federal investigation is underway. CIS considers voter registration systems to be critical infrastructure and thus requires states and counties to implement the highest level of security. The only way to ensure that there is no one vote for every legal registered voter is careful control of the voter registration database. So you have this, which then aligns with, you go to the next one if you would. This is from 11/3. The date of the election in 2020. This is a FBI communication, and this goes through documents related to Maricopa County Recorder's Office cyber intrusion data exfiltration. Now, keep in mind that we didn't have access to this stuff, B. Like, this just got declassified, right? Right?
Yeah, so there was actually, if you remember, there was the arrest that was made just a few days right before the election in Maricopa County. And there was actually Skyview footage of that federal raid. Yeah. And then it just went bam, memory hole down the water, just like the one in Chicago with the driver's license, and the 500,000 watermark ballots. I mean, poof, it just all went up in smoke in the air. But this is, it's interesting that we're talking about this again, because this is, that registration system, that poll pad or that pad they use is Knowing. And if you go into the RFP for Georgia, when they accepted Dominion voting, part of that was with Knowing, and Knowing completely redacted every single page of that RFP.
Why?
That's a wonderful question, Joe.
Yeah, so this is why I get to the people being slaves and us not getting really access to any information, because it's a trust us, bro system. It's a system of trust us, bro.
And why was Scott Leyendecker running
Knowing?
Yeah, who founded Knowing? Why was he involved in elections in Central European states and the Balkans?
Yeah. Dating back and had connections with some of the same people that we're talking about related to Dominion voting system. They're all in on it. It's a big club. It's a big club.
Yeah.
But as you look through this, my point is that as you look through this documentation, it does not take a rocket scientist to figure out that, we were talking about this infiltration. We were talking about this days after the election. Now, it's Providence. I was on a call with Eric Coomer, which, by the way, I just want to point this out. They're like, "Oh, Joe, the call didn't occur." Listen, if the call didn't occur, it wouldn't have led me to have the other information. The other information on Eric Coomer by itself was damning. As you get further into the last 6 years, it gets even more damning. The call, let's say that I would have left the call out. Then they would have come back and said, "Well, how did you get access to this information?" I was like, "Well, I was on this call." So I gave them all the information, B. I gave them all the information. But the call is not as important as everything else that we learned about Eric Coomer and his involvement in the 2020 election being stolen. The only thing that led me to Eric Coomer was the fact he's on a call bragging about the fact that Trump's not going to win. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had, but one does not relate to the other. It would have been explosive either way, without a call, with a call. It doesn't matter. There's no call. Eric Coomer goes, but there was a call, which led me to Eric Coomer. There was no other way to get to Eric Coomer other than the call. I wouldn't even have known who he was. There would have been no way to find Eric Coomer inside of Dominion voting systems 3 days later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, totally. I think probably the biggest criticism about that would be, oh, well, why didn't you record it? Well, I don't think you were expecting that. I mean,
I wasn't expecting. Look, you're looking for Antifa journalists. First of all, the kid that gave me access to it is Antifa, and we all saw what Antifa did to people in 2020. I mean, they murdered a guy in 2020, literally in Portland, Oregon. A guy walked up to a guy and shot him point blank range in the chest, killing him. And later on, when the police went to go look for him, he ended up killing himself. That's why I say evil is not afraid of the consequences. They just off themselves, and Team Evil did what Team Evil was supposed to do. They had their mark, they did their thing, and now they checked out, right? So that there is no care of consequence when you're on Team Evil. And so there was a general fear. There's a fear that he had. But I had enough cover by everything else. October 15th radical leftist deal where I said I'd infiltrated Antifa. You have John Tig Tigan, you have their own affidavit on their side. I mean, it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. And everything that the left does is nonsense, but leaves behind these breadcrumbs. And yet we're still having a conversation on whether or not we should throw out the machines and pass the Save America Act. It's crazy. It's nuts.
I agree. There is, and to that point, explaining how election processes work to people abroad, they're absolutely flabbergasted that the U.S. would have such a compromised system. Thought of mail-in balloting,
if not on purpose,
drop boxes. Yeah, even the voting machines, they were tried once here and never happened again. Smartmatic was used once and then poof, done. Bye. And I trying to explain to them what happens. How did Joe Biden get 15 million more votes in 2020 than when he was elected to be vice president for Barack Obama?
Well, and how did a guy that basically couldn't fill circles in 2020 and stayed in his basement and couldn't articulate anything, let alone what he had for lunch, win by a popular vote that was so superfluous? And you could say that they needed to have those many votes in those areas in order to defeat President Trump, and that would be true. But they also knew that they needed to make sure they took President Trump off of the table, because a successive 4 years could have been detrimental to everything that was happening in the country. So, which leads me back
more.
Yeah, which leads me back to the Smartmatic election shipments. You were able to uncover this stuff, and I want to put this up. And the reason why we're bringing this stuff together with everyone, just so you know, is and I push back a little bit that look, people don't they can't they don't give a shit about coincidences. They want to see hard facts. But I think we have to put this up here. Here's a Smartmatic election shipment. What are we looking at here? Why is this important, and what happened as a result of this being released?
Okay, so this is a Smartmatic. So this is from a UK incorporated entity called Smartmatic Elections, which is registered same address as Smartmatic SGO. And we'll get into what they've been up to a little bit later on, probably in another episode with something called Folio. But let's just look at this. Here you have this one shipment from Smartmatic Elections in its entire existence, right? That was it. Just one shipment. Now, if we go down here, we'll see it took place in May 2020, correct?
Yep.
So if we keep scrolling, we'll get even more information. Where did it originate from? It originated from China. It was a UK ordered shipment from China, which then, if we keep scrolling down, it ended up in Port Everglades, Florida. Now, I'd like to point out something here. Patrick, could just stop scrolling, go up a little bit second here. Just scroll up. Now, what does this say in this gray box? What does this say the cargo description is? Pharmaceutical, wedding gauze, bandages. What was this shipment? Well, if we go down, we can actually see what it was. It went to Port Everglades, Florida, right? You have container number. This is irrefutable information. Download directly from CBP. But what was this? Well, for a total shipping price of $8,280.72, Smartmatic sent 4 containers of face masks from China to Port Everglades, Florida.
Why would they do that?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, Joe. Why would they do that? I wonder what was on that shipment. Why would they need to send 4 containers of face masks? Why would Smartmatic SGO need to send 4 containers of face masks?
Well, 4 containers of face masks, and it was 10,000 kilograms, right?
16,000 actually, total weight container.
Oh, is it 16,000? Okay.
Yeah, number of containers, 4, weight 16,000 kilograms. Quantities
1,600 count.
Yeah.
1,600 what? Boxes?
If I am, and I've actually done customs work before, I was actually certified. If I would have seen any type of documentation like this, I would have flagged it immediately. But there's more.
Okay. Let's move
If we
on
go-
to. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, let's go over to the second one. Smartmatic International Corporation. Corporatio, I get it, it's cut off, doesn't matter. What's that flag that's right next to it? What is that? What is that? Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's
This
China's
one.
flag. Oh,
So yeah, they claim it operates out of Taiwan.
yeah, Taiwan. Okay.
Yeah. So 3 Zhang Road, Saiwei Lane, Xindian District.
So hold on a second. So this is Smartmatic International Corporation with an office in Taiwan.
Yeah, Taiwan, but look where the shipments are actually coming from now. When we actually go down here, they're actually coming from Taipei, Taiwan, Kaohsiung, and Qingdao, which is not Taiwan. And where do all of these shipments end up? They all end up in the one place where Smartmatic is used in the US, and that's Los Angeles.
California.
And that also begs the question, why did they send a container to Port Everglades, Florida, if nobody even has Smartmatic in Florida? It's the other side of the country.
Yeah, so why would they do that?
It's a good question.
There weren't face masks.
No. So Asia, 75.9% shipments, 62, Europe, Portugal, 19, North America, Canada, 2. And here, if you go down, top lanes used, Taipei, Los Angeles, 48 times, Yantian to Los Angeles, which is China, main body China, directly to Los Angeles, 18 times. And you can get even more information down here. The notification parties, in this case, the Commission on Elections, which would have been, in the case of the Philippines, that's what that was considered. But yeah, let's look top port ship from. And understand anything that's coming out of Taipei or Hong Kong, or anything from Taiwan is just going to be, or Vietnam is going to be CCP.
But you're sending it into Los Angeles. So you have Smartmatic, which is a Chinese company. So now it has a Chinese company, Chinese address, is sending, or should be Taiwanese, that's sending into from China into the United States. Nobody's questioning it. It happens before the election. There was 21 shipments. How many shipments?
In total, they had 63 shipments.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can see here there were 5 containers of spare electronic components that were sent. Yeah.
Go up. Or down. Sorry, go down. Go down.
Yeah, go down. Yeah, down. So you can see exactly what these are. And this is, Dominion did the same thing on their bills of lading too. In the cargo description, they would put screen or something superficial like a battery charger, a battery pack, something in that regard. Something that would be completely nonsensical to really outsource to China when you can find a cheap supplier in the US. you wouldn't have to ship them from China. It doesn't even matter if they originate from China. But there was one bill of lading in particular, which I had also found, which was of a 40-foot container. So your standard is like your 40-foot containers, like your standard, like Walmart or Swift Logistics trailer, right? That's a 40-footer.
Right.
The cargo in there was completely nondescript. The cargo description did not even really describe what was placed in there. So effectively what they just had was this 40-foot container to show up from China for Dominion voting.
So we have 35,000 pounds of masks that were shipped in the first container that went to Florida, of all places.
Yeah.
And then we have 63 containers that went to Los Angeles and spare parts. And this all happened right before the election in 2020. Nothing.
Yeah. Well, in this case, these were, you can tell from the periods of the shipments. You can also get like a cargo description breakdown, furniture's automatic data processing. They even had.
There's one, Boca Raton. Here's another one from Boca Raton.
Yeah.
Spare electronic components, Boca Raton.
One of their cargo description was also containers holding 2 liters or less of beverages, wine or fresh. This was also one of their used cargo descriptions for Smartmatic. And again, this just goes to show, why are we even opening up ourselves to the possibility that these shipments are nefarious? Just shut down these voting machine companies.
We can't. It'd be 90% less, 91% less. It would cost us 99% of our current budget. 9% of our current budget be if we would just go to hand count paper ballots, precinct counting, just upload it into a system, make sure it's certified by the left and the right. You have left, right, middle that were there to watch it, make your precincts no more than 3,000 people, and away you go. And you'd have massive number of precincts that come through. You'd have the ability to audit it. It'd be paper. You'd have an ID, make sure you have clean voter rolls, and you would never face this problem again.
Yep. And over here, the way we do it over here in Italy is you have an assigned precinct. When you become of age, you have a precinct assigned to you. You have a polling station assigned to you. You're then mailed your voting registration card, which contains a block for a stamp, because when you go to vote, you then have to get a unique stamp for that specific election or referendum before you can even step foot into your assigned polling pad, to your assigned polling box, where you then have to write in all the information. It's not, fill out the Christmas tree. It's not fill in the blanks or circle in the dots. Yeah. It's literally write out the candidates, their party, or the law, the legislation, yes or no, approve or not approve, and then you slip it into the box. And by the time that we wake up the morning after, we already have a final count. This is not hard.
It's not hard at all. And these guys go 3, 4, 5 weeks without having an outcome, and it's because we have it's just large numbers. You can manipulate any outcome you want, any primary, any election. And the American people are so retarded, and frankly, they're just they just feel like they've been put in a helpless situation where they don't have any control over the very thing that they should have all the control over. And it's going to take violence, bro. I'm just telling you right now. I don't wish violence on anybody. And I just gotten to the point now where getting angry just doesn't do me any good. I'm back to the pre-2020 where I just recognize it. I'm like, all right, I'll just wait. I'll wait for it.
Are we not already at the violent stage though? I mean, look what's going down with all the protests. And this is why I say, I understand your point with Tyler Robinson, but people need to identify that the far left is a very violent entity. They have a lot of foreign backing as well.
Let me just tell you something. The left is not violent. The left is violent, but they're a nuisance violence. Like they have no idea what violence is. They have no idea the fact that when the American people, and I hear this every day, decide that they've had enough of team evil, the good people of this country will do what they did in World War II, and they will annihilate. They will literally wipe them off the face of the planet. I mean, it's not even close. It's not even close the type of power and strength good people have versus the team evil. It's not even close. It's not even close to being a competition, right? When the good people of this country decide to go on the offensive, and I think it's happening. I think it's coming, right? There will not be a stone left unturned, in my opinion, right? And I pray it doesn't happen, but I'm also a realist, and I can see some of the things I'm going to tell you about real quick as we wrap this up. You cannot have some of these things happen, and the American people say, "No, we're done. We're done with you stealing elections. We're done with you overtaxing us. We're done with you stealing our homes and stealing our children and telling us that you can do whatever you want to them. We're done. We're done with you handing out handouts and entitlements to illegals and people that are foreigners, giving them our judges' jobs and making them rule over us in our communities. Yeah, you can just F all the way off." You see it happening, bro. I'm sorry. You see what's happening. And I know you're in a different country, but it's happening here. It's happening.
Well, I mean, the Civil War started for less.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think the parameters have been moved, to Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
There's a valid argument that it started because of, T-tax, whatever.
Look what happened, J6. Say what you want. Those American people, man, they showed what the power of the people is. And you could say that insurrection, whatever, which is a lie. But the American people in mass, for good, evil can't even, they run like little you-know-whats. They hide.
Well, and this is, and we've talked about this before. This is what makes the 3.5% rule so effective, because the way it targets public opinion, and it kind of just, it sedates the masses. It really, it controls the narrative. That's really what the far left is relying upon. And, I wish we had more time to go into the other stuff. I know we were going to revisit, some of like those more glaring examples, but right now,
yeah,
I'm not seeing that everything can be done to address this before something goes kinetic, because there's too many jihadists running. There's too many commies who are still getting in. The DSA is, the Democrats have pandered to the DSA for years, and the DSA have emotionally manipulated the Democratic establishment for years, well over a decade.
right.
And now that relationship is just becoming public, and it's open, it's out there. And now, for the 25th anniversary of September 11th, we're going to have an openly jihadist mayor. Let's make one thing clear. Zoran Mamdani is a jihadist. He parades himself as a socialist, but he is by all accounts a jihadist. He even wrote about this himself while he went to Egypt in 2012 to support the Muslim Brotherhood while he was still a student at Bowdoin College.
Yeah.
He wrote about this extensively, his time there, and how he had to self-exile. He had to leave because he felt unsafe after the Muslim Brotherhood fell in Egypt, because he felt he could no longer walk around as a brown man with a beard in Egypt.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And to that effect, we should probably really quickly look at this. But there was an election that just happened in Michigan. It was a primary election, and Abdul Sayed just won. And this is Latina Brown talking about, I thought Abdullah Sayed was going to win by a landslide. All the polling conducted is wrong. The race is very close. The DSA just handed a win to the Republicans for the general election. Just you wait for it. Okay, so Abdul Sayed, Democrat. And again, you see 50-50. See, 48.5, 47.5. And this is 50-50 even on the Democrat ticket. So not only... I gotta say this, because the retarded can't understand this. Not only do our general elections that we have 50-50 and 60-40, and they're nearly perfect, and they all align. They have irregular heartbeats, and and they violate the rule of large numbers in massive ways. We have more 50-50 elections in this country. But now we have the same thing happening on the primaries on both sides of the aisle. So they're actually picking winners and losers and picking who's the candidate for the Republicans, and now they're picking it for the Democrats. No difference.
Yep, and that is, they allowed the very beast that's going to defeat them to fester and to mature and to percolate. And this, what was the eventual outcome? If you have people, a gerontocracy, basically.
Yeah.
With 60, 70, 80-year-olds, do you think that they can just keep their hands on the lever for all eternity, and that these systems wouldn't then fall into, someone else's hands to be manipulated and abused? And this is where we're at now. On the far left, they are much more organized, and they are much farther ahead than the GOP is. Because again, the GOP in its own nature is stagnant and reactionary.
Well, because we're captured, right? Good people get captured by the idea that someone is good. This is the same thing I say about John Solomon and Steve Bannon. They talk softly, and they move things around, and they make it look like they're actually on your side, and they anti-establishment, but they're really establishment. They're really play for Team Evil and will take every opportunity, and they're wrong all the time, but they have to lead people like the Pied Piper down a pathway that leads to destruction, while acting like, sorry, oops, didn't work out that way. And as we start to uncover things, go ahead.
Well, and yeah, to that point, this is, if someone on the right were to infiltrate the left, and I'm not talking about like one of those no cap on God videos, as epic as this trolling is, you're not going to find a right winger posing as a left winger to infiltrate things like the DSA and to try and subvert them from within using that kind of Fabian-esque methodology. But the left, in particular through the establishment, they have very many actors who have infiltrated on the right and within, the MAGA camp as well. And we're starting to see a lot of that come through the cracks as well. And this is why it didn't surprise me that, Joe Kent had his moment too, because, his wife working for Gray Zone. I was like, oh, that doesn't surprise me at all.
So you think he's bad?
I think he is.
I think the guy, look, I'm telling you right now,
filling a role.
I don't, bro, we're going to have to disagree. Joe Kent is a man who thinks for himself, and he gets frustrated. When he gets frustrated, he speaks exactly what he thinks. And when he sees the administration, however it's being controlled, go in one direction or the other that violates his conscience, he is 100% a Boy Scout. I'm going to tell you, that guy's a Boy Scout. Joe Kent is a Boy Scout. He doesn't know how to be. And I don't even like his attitude. Like, I want to punch him in his face sometimes. Right. I
have to ask why his wife's boss is over at the Ayatollah's funeral in Iran. I mean, and this behavior didn't start until later on down the road with him. So again, he was. I could be wrong. I could be convinced. Remember, years ago, it wasn't even that long ago. He was all about, we got to deal with this Iran situation, this nuclear Iran situation. And even when I was downrange in Iraq, man, we saw we had these little explosives there. They're called EFPs, nasty little buggers, and a lot of the militias picked them up. But they were basically a creation, basically of the IRGC.
Yeah.
And they, these guys, they killed a lot of people, and it was well known that the Iranians were looking to develop something. Every time something happened, in Iraq, it was, okay, let's start looking eastward for who committed this. And in Afghanistan, it was the opposite. It was like, okay, let's start looking westward for who committed this, because, what lies right in between there. That would be Iran. So me personally, I think this is a play for China to destabilize China. It's a long game. Do I think it has its faults? Absolutely. Do I think we may have been underprepared in some regards? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think our military is overstressed? Well, we talked about this earlier. The Air Force is thousands of pilots short. The Navy can't build ships. We have troops in over 100 countries, so they're pretty stressed as it is. So, am I a fan of new conflict? No, but am I a fan of getting rid of the Iranian regime, which was actually, if you were to take the 1979 Iranian regime and match it to what we see between the Red Green Alliance today, you would almost not even be able to find a single disparity in the comparison because it's the exact same apparatus. And when they took control in 1979, the jihadists, and they did this with the support of Jamaat Islami, which gave birth to Al Qaeda, Taliban, etc. I'm not going to go into a history lesson here, but as soon as that became effective, and by the way, that same entity gave birth to, the Islamic Circle of North America, which in effect gave birth to, CARE and all these other bad actors we're seeing these days. When that entity had taken effect in 1979, the first thing they did was they walked all the commies, all the revolutionaries out, and they just offed them right in the middle of the streets, man.
Yes, they did.
And
But I'm
this
not
is
looking for
history
that.
repeating.
I'm not looking for death and destruction. I'm looking for accountability. And I think the American people are looking for accountability. But you see the DEI, CRT, the gender fluidity, all the things that are happening with grooming of our children, the education, just indoctrination that's happened that's left us kind of blind and deaf and dumb when it comes to math, science, English, all the basics. And while teachers are saying, I need to get paid more, they get paid for 7 months of work, 8 months of work, what a normal person gets paid for 12 months of work. So I don't feel bad for them either. And at the same time, I look at what we've done to leave our children behind. And you have homeschool parents and you have all these things that people are having to walk away from and make their own environments. While largely we have this capturing happening, which is pushing more and more pressure on the people where we don't even own anything. We don't own our houses. We don't own our cars. And people say, "Well, I own my house. I paid it off." Well, you have to pay property tax, which means
Property tax, yeah.
right.
Yeah, tell
it's
your
a lot.
homeowners association that.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their thumb on you in this country, and so it's turned into this very slave-like environment. So, anyway, it's we talk about you put up a post that I want to make sure before we get off, we have people go look at. This is a post having to do with the coronation of Mamdani becoming the mayor of New York City. And that it's not a fluke, rather it's an indication of what is more to come, indicator of what is to come in more cities if the terrorist networks behind them are not exposed. And you walk through very closely the connections to that have been written about by the Post, and that it walks through some of the connective tissue between these two, like the Islamic Circle of North America. I would also call it, the Muslim Society of America, MSA, and some of the other organizations that are out there as well. But you spell this out pretty clearly. Tell us what the connections are real quick before we wrap up and what this means for all of us.
Yeah, so there's a huge South Asian terrorist tent behind Zoran Mamdani, and this was evidenced by the fact that a man named Ashfaq Khan actually campaigned with him. And this man was convicted. He's a Jamaat Islami member, a very senior member who was convicted in the 1971 genocide. And he's just one of a few who actually fall into Mamdani's circle. We had kind of alluded to it earlier in an earlier episode, a couple months back, actually discussing, the Muslim Democratic Club of New York, which his judicial advisor, the judicial advisor to the mayor, so the guy who's going to be advising Mamdani and who he selects judges, co-founded alongside Linda Sarsour. He himself is also a member of ICNA. He's a very prominent member of ICNA, actually. And he is also a lawyer who specializes in election law. Now, if you go down here, you see what is ICNA. They're the U.S.-based arm of Jamaat Islami, which is a group which was born out of Pakistan. These guys basically gave birth to Al Qaeda and the Taliban. As a matter of fact, their militant organization, the Hizbul Mujahideen, was actually allegedly they were the owners of the Abbottabad compound where Osama bin Laden was hiding. And if you go back to 9/11, we briefly alluded to it earlier. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was actually arrested in Rawalpindi in 2003 in the home of a Islami member. And again, these guys now, if you look at it, you'll see at the first post that these guys also advised the U.S. that the U.S. CMO advised DHS. They did. One of those things in particular was the Clear Skies program, as well as countering violent extremism. So what we see with like a lot of like these the rise of these, you know, these white extremists, these nationalists, a lot of that came from these CVE lectures. Muldooney is he's basically the father of all this. His granddaughter actually was trying to run for the Cobb County GOP chair in Georgia. She was the vice chair at the time, and she was running to become the GOP chair. And she was very much ascendant on the political scene until we discovered who she was. And anyways, the guy I talked to you about earlier, Shahzman Khan, he was part of the IJT. They called him the Al-Badir, and these were the guys who literally drugged people out. Like he was actually identified in his trial in absentia. He was convicted in absentia of genocide alongside another guy named Modiur Rahman Nizami, who we'll see later on down here in this thread. But anyway, Sophia's dad actually created ICNA. Her dad and her grandfather actually.
And we've talked about that here. We've talked about that on the show, right?
Yeah, and this is the same. They started it in New York, even though it was originally incorporated in Florida. But they began in New York. It really came from a lot of the Muslim Students Association. If we go down a little bit more, we'll see just a few more of these actors involved.
Wait, hold on a second. You saw that they had the things about Iran, so the connective tissue to Iran as well, right there. Stop.
Yeah. So if you actually click on this, you can actually find click on the photos, the images. You actually find that Maududi and Khomeini had a very close relationship familially. Even their fathers knew each other.
Yeah. So this is where you can't help but you keep going.
Yeah.
Go down.
Yeah, that's another post. If you go back up, just exit out of this one. If you go back to the previous, okay, so go to where it says sovereignty and the sovereignty in 1979 movement in Iran. Yes, go to this one. So if you read this, actually, my analysis of various. Well, let me just pull it up myself here.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, actually, that'd be great. You read it, yeah, for your viewers.
So this article explores the engagement of the Pakistani Jamal al-Islami with the Iran Revolution. I argue that the Islamist jihad was drawn to the events because it reflects a core concern and signature of the Abi Allah Maududi, named to establish the sovereignty of God on earth. My analysis of various travelogues and JI publication from the 1980s demonstrates that JI observers were deeply familiar with internal revolutionary dynamics in Iran's Shia identity. The prospect of seeing a proper Islamic system in action with potential global consequences for their cause initially crowded out any sectarian concern for the JI. At the same time, certain JI leaders began to voice criticism of what they perceived as rushed revolutionary policies deferred from Maududi, careful Iranic understanding of the proper Islamic revolution. They also took note of sectarian messages that damages Iran's ecumenical outreach. It was, however, the more general geopolitical climate in the Middle East and South Asia were forced the GI to publicly downplay the ties with Iran. By the late 1980s, being accused of harboring affinities for the deviant Islam of Shiism was charged that had to be avoided at all costs in Pakistan and beyond.
Yeah, so basically what that's stating is that they were very familiar. As a matter of fact, even Maududi said that he wanted to live beyond to ensure his fear was that the Iranian Revolution would fail, and that the only reason they publicly distanced themselves from the 1979 revolution, wherein Maududi was actually already dead. Maududi died in Buffalo, New York in 1979. And his body was then expatriated back to or repatriated, sorry, back to Pakistan, where he's buried in Lahore. As a matter of fact, there's effectively a shrine to him. So that's really kind of and this was the guy who said he admired Hitler, and the whole world demanded subjugation to Islam and demanded a violent revolution in order to establish the global caliphate. And
right. And some of this, by the way, is theater. Some of it isn't. But the bottom line is that what is happening with Mamdani, and we've seen this before, is that they now are questioning whether or not he was legitimately elected as the mayor. That they can't even the election commission can't come up with numbers that would produce a legitimacy to the election of Mamdani, and they're now pursuing that. But again, nobody has been questioned, and at the time, nobody questioned it. Now it's just become this black cloud over the election system. But more and more, they keep saying, "Well, this election's not good. This election's not good." But no one's doing anything about it. B. And I think that gets me to that place where I say now, we just don't have any courage. We have no balls, which is what I said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats publicly, at least, they're going to be in a bit of a tight space, a bit of a jam between this one. Which is it? Are elections rigged or are they not? Are elections secure or are they not? The most secure election in the world in 2020, and now we're rehashing that Arizona arrest just days before, when we knew that the election systems have been compromised, and now they're being forced to address this within their radical faction of the DSA/jihadists. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here with this. But the fact that anyone actually even came out with it, and from what I understand, it didn't actually come from Marty Hornick, by the way.
Did
No, I heard it came from somewhere else, but it kind of par for the course. Sometimes people find out other people's work and they pass off as their own. Well, I say that definitively happened here, no, but I've heard it came from another source. But it's good that it's being looked at. It's good that it's being addressed, and because keep in mind, New York City is home to the SEC. It's home to the SDNY, the EDNY, pretty much like all like terrorism charges and like financial fraud charges are processed out of those jurisdictions. Now, granted, those are federally appointed judges, but the fact that they're still operating within that New York City jurisdiction, there's going to be a heavy tilt towards far leftists.
I think there's going to be and I'll just say this. I put this up there before. Until we decide we're going to learn our lesson and do what is necessary in order to protect our elections, we are going to continue to suffer the consequences, which is why I think that it's going to take normal people that really do care about their country in order to step forward and to evict these people. So, and I think that's coming.
I think a good starting point would be to have, for the 25th anniversary of September 11th, the families have signed this petition for Zoran Mamdani to not be present. I think it would be a wonderful show of solidarity if, patriots just from everywhere came together by the tens of thousands and just swarmed New York and forced his hand into staying away from those ceremonies.
Yeah,
that's just me.
B, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it very much. How do people follow you?
Yeah, so you guys have my Twitter handle up there, at DanteXXX.
You also have
Jody.
I want to encourage people. What do you put on a counter Dawan? Put that down. Take that down.
Well, that's also me as well. So counter Dawa is kind of it is. So it's me and a dear friend. We also have counterdawa.com, wherein we put our reports, which are publicly available. And this is just one of the profiles. We have Counter Dawa. In my personal, my actual profile, as I guess you would say, it's like an anon account or whatever. It is at Dante Roman numeral 32 God. an obvious reference to, the 32nd canto of Dante's Inferno. Treason,
All right.
might add.
Treason. Well,
There we
brother,
go,
I really appreciate you being on. We're going to cover more related to some forbidden projects right now. We know that there's some investigations underway, so we've talked about some stuff. We're going to stay away from that right now. But I do appreciate all the work that you've done over the last 6 years and your commitment to making sure we get to the truth.
I appreciate it, man. As always, it's been a pleasure, and looking forward to the next.
All right. God bless you, brother.
God bless you guys.
Whew, man, B's, he's been the kind of consistent person in all of this that we deal with. So we're going to close some prayer. As I say before, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and more. We know we're on Roku. Obviously, that's a new great channel. We're going to be submitting to get onto Netflix on the podcast side. So look forward to it. That should be pretty irreverent, I think. And then we've got some really cool stuff that's going to be coming in over the next 30 days related to what if we were 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Wreck-It Ralph got some really cool stuff, handled some sports stuff, handled some politics, but news and maybe from a more I don't know, not 24 hours a day of Joe, but there's going to be some pretty cool things that we work on our side. So make sure you hit the thumbs up button, give us a 5-star review, do all the things that you normally do, but be the ambassadors of truth, be the one to share it. Today's podcast is great. It was a great podcast, and B is always one to bring the smoke and all the information associated with it. Now, again, you'd say that, there's correlation, causation, coincidence, what's in the shipping container. It's 6 years later. We don't know. Well, what we can tell you is that there hasn't been honest dealings. And we know that the people involved are inside Dominion. They're inside of Smartmatic. These are nefarious actors that set up shell corporations and other companies everywhere and then hide behind it. That's what they do. They're evil. And Team Evil, frankly, does not rest, and we can't rest either. So let's pray it out. Father God, thank you for B. Thank you for the work that he's done. Thank you for the group of people around the country that has just done amazing things. Thank you for David Clements. Thank you for Mark Cook. Thank you for Ed Solomon. Thank you for the people inside the administration that are working hard on making sure that we can have accountability. Thank you for President Trump for having all of the courage that he has to stand up and to do very unpopular things at times. And some things that I don't agree with, but that frankly may or may not be necessary. But I don't have I don't have access to all the information. So we tend to kind of criticize what we can't see. But there are things we can see, Father. We can see that there's a restoration that's needed, and putting you back inside of our society in every way, shape, and form is the way that'll lead us to a more ethical, moral, more opportunity, and more blessed society. And Father, we just ask for that for not just America, but for all nations around the world. We see this endemic problem that's kind of eaten at the soul, the very ethos of faithful nations. And so, Father, we just ask you that the people would be awake and that they'd be able to fight back. And Father, we just ask for the courage, commitment, the wisdom, the tenacity to fulfill your will. And we know that ultimately it comes down to what you want, Father. But obviously we can see what's in front of us, and we desperately want to lead us towards a path of happiness and peacefulness, and we know that it will take work. So just help us that we will stay in this fight. I say these things humbly in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. We'll see you guys later. Have a great weekend. Have a great Saturday. Have a great Sunday. Remember, go follow me, share me, do whatever. But make sure that you also become an advocate and a voice for truth, and just do your own research, right? Don't, like I said yesterday about Tucker and others, some are bad, some are good, some are misguided, but do not let high school creep into your life. Do not let them dictate what the narrative is for individuals, and make sure you do your own research before you say that a person is or is not a certain way. So God bless you. We'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Rise up untamed in the heart of the fire. home. From conservative daily to this untamed fire, we shatter the silence, lifting spirits higher. No chains can hold us, no lies can prevail. Authentic and fearless on this rugged trail. Patriots gather under stars and stripes. Untamed nation, igniting the night. Untamed nation, let the truth roll out in this land of the free. Standing proud from sea to shining sea, we won't back down. Catch the fire, wear the crown. Untamed nation, it's our battle song, motivating hearts where the brave belong. Yeah, untamed and wild, forever strong. Play it again all night long. Break the mold, chase the real. No more games, time to heal. Joe's voice leads the untamed crew. Truth matters through and through. Untamed nation, let the truth roll out in this land of the free. Standing proud from sea to shining sea, we won't back down. Catch the fire, wear the crown. Untamed nation, it's our battle song, motivating hearts where the brave belong. Yeah, untamed and wild, forever strong. Play it again all night long. Truth forever. True forever.